Okay guys, a very warm welcome to what is an exceptionally overdue Cofiwch Dryweryn map update. I thought during Eisteddfod week this was probably as good a time as any to get out a brand new video and give us a chance to reflect on how the Cofiwch Dryweryn movement has changed and evolved over recent months. I mean, it has been a very long time since I managed to get a video out. Indeed, it has been a very long time since I've actually physically updated the map. And that's for a couple of reasons. Some of them are sort of my work-based reasons, but also, let's be honest, since the lockdowns took place, the Cofiwch Dryweryn map hasn't evolved that much. It's sort of slowed down quite a bit. So there have been changes, there have been some additions, some amendments, and some deletions from the map, but they're not happening anywhere near as rapidly as they used to be, which is sort of to be expected. The Cofiwch Dryweryn movement had, a big surge of attention and energy when it first kicked off, about 2 years ago, a little bit over 2 years ago. But these things slow down, and if we look at the map as it is, we have got 156 reference points at this point. And it was a big moment when the Cofiwch Dryweryn list passed 100 entries, and it's just kept ticking on to in excess of 150. So the movement isn't so much finished as perhaps running out of steam. I think, is that fair to say? Is it unfair to say? I don't know, you tell me. All I can say for sure is that there was a lot of talk about a year ago, maybe just a little bit less, that as we moved out of the lockdowns, we would see a big wave of new Cofiwch Dryweryn murals and a big wave of updates and refreshing of paintings. And again, objectively speaking, that didn't happen. And it's interesting to speculate as to the why. Have the Cofiwch Dryweryn murals served their purpose? Are we awaiting a big resurgence of new murals just around the corner? Is there, a political event on the horizon which will see lots of new murals present themselves? As I find myself struggling to say the word mural, who knows? Or has it just run out of steam in terms of the scale at which it used to be engaged with? I don't know, and I would welcome thoughts on that. But nonetheless, whatever the state of health of Cofiwch Dryweryn as a form of protest is today, there are still obvious changes that are taking place with the map. So I'm going to talk about some of those changes, and maybe we can reflect on the meaning of those in relation to the mural movement in a broader sense as we go. So let's deal with some of the additions, because there have been one or two notable ones. Perhaps the most significant one for us to draw reference to is down here, and let's zoom in on that. This is the Hay on Y entry. Now, this is important. One of the things that I've been writing about in my published work on the Cofiwch Dryweryn entries. Let's just bring up the picture, because my internet's fairly slow at the minute and it takes a little while for these images to upload, but let's bring it up. There we go. Small picture of the Hay on Y example. So this is under the main bridge as you're going through Hay on Y. This emerged just about the around about the time of the Hay on Y book festival. So a significant moment within the cultural calendar of Hay on Y. Obviously a time when there's a lot more footfall than normal, and a very timely moment to introduce this sort of mural to the landscape, just when footfall is ramping up. So obviously that's a very interesting addition in terms of timing. But I think what's more interesting about this is the geography of it. Now, the thing I've been writing about in my published work has looked at border areas and where Cofiwch Dryweryn can be seen as contested in relation to some border areas. So we've looked up here in relation to monuments in and around Wrexham, where some have been removed altogether, but others are what we would describe as being contested. So the examples sort of in and around the Pwllheli Aqueduct and along the route of the Llangollen Canal are examples where we've seen defacing of monuments. So the images that you see here have changed quite dramatically. Say in the recording detail, damage has been recorded over the years, to the extent that it seems like somebody or some people locally wanted to get rid of them. So the idea here was that the Cofiwch Dryweryn murals are more contested in areas that might be seen as border territories. Something I want to talk about later in the video as well might contest that, but nonetheless, that's what the evidence in this part of Wales was suggesting. But one of the things that's really striking is that the border areas generally were quite poorly represented in terms of murals. So let's just zoom out a little bit further here. This entire border area was completely lacking. I mean, we had this one example in Welshpool. If you look at the date that it was first recorded, that was in 2020, and as you can see, it's quite a temporary example. This was very much spray can graffiti, lacking the sort of the sense of permanence of the formal murals. Nobody has got back to me about the condition of the Welshpool example. It was last monitored very late 2020. We're in 2022 now. So I would suspect that this one has gone. If anyone's going through Welshpool, I would very much welcome an update as to whether this is still there or not. But I suspect it's probably gone. But let's say it's not there. So there's this huge swathe along the border area which was lacking in representation up until Hay-on-Wye was added earlier on this year, 2022. So one of the newest murals, very much within a border territory. So it was with great appreciation to see images spreading around social media and some being sent directly to me about this particular example, because I think the geography of it is really quite interesting. So that's a useful addition. In terms of new examples, that's about it, really. So when I was saying that the Cofiwch Dryweryn movement might be seen to have run out of steam, the fact that I only have one new addition to report to you would perhaps be evidence of that. Yeah, there's not like I mean, it's been months since I've put out a Cofiwch Dryweryn mural video, and I've got one new entry to give you, which is perhaps telling us something. There are several examples that have been refreshed, updated, or are showing signs of deterioration. One of the saddest omissions, if we roll down, where are we? We need T. Tonga and lice. This one was one of the most loved examples. You can see here, I've actually marked it differently. It's got a different symbol here because this was commemorating a banner. And for the most part, I was refusing to add banners to the map because banners are far less permanent than murals. All it takes is one person to rip it down and it's gone. So I didn't really feel the banners were good entries to the map, because the whole point of the murals is they are to some extent permanent additions to the map, or permanent additions to the landscapes in which they are placed. The difference with this mural, of course, was that you could not easily rip this one down because it was so high up, and I don't think anybody has still really laid a claim as to how they put it up there, or their specific motivations, which you could probably guess at, given the narrative of monarchy on this particular memorial or monument. But storms put pay to this, and the Tonga example has finally fallen. That was a little bit earlier this year, I think. Yeah, so it was recorded in February of 2022 as finally having been undone by the elements. And I sort of smile. It's obviously sad to see it go, but I'm smiling because it was remarkable for how long it stayed in place. This was first recorded in 2019, and it stood up there somehow calendarically for about 3 years. Not quite 3 years in total, but it went from 2019 through to 2022. So that was a really good effort for a banner to stay up there all that long. And it went through several storms before it finally came down. So it'll be interesting to see if that's replaced with something in the future, but it is an example of something that's gone. Now, I suppose the distinction here is that the loss of the Tonguinlais mural is more incidental or accidental. Yeah. So we would say that it's not been deliberately removed, which is an important distinction to make, because if we come out of Tonguinlais and we zoom out, you can actually see on the map that there are various clusters where we have lost examples. So I'm going to go up north and we're going to focus in on Pwllheli. Now, if you look here, there is a cluster of 3 entries, and this is one where, for some reason, Pwllheli is off the map in its entirety. Now, there was a time when Pwllheli was incredibly well represented. If we zoom in, we've got 3 examples that were recorded. Now, often with Cofiwch Dryweryn murals, you see one in a particular town, and then that's it. So you get one in one place, and then you go to the next town, there's another, you go to the next town, there's another there. But generally speaking, they are isolated, one per community. It's rare that you get clusters. Pwllheli challenged that. We did have 3 examples. The first example, recorded back in 2019, if the image will come up. Yeah, on the side of the shop. You can see it up there in the top. That's gone. Painted over. There, no more. The Penlan Fawr garden entry. So this was in a pub. Now, I don't have photographic confirmation, or maybe I do. I lose track. I've had a lot of images sent to me. I think I do have photographic confirmation of this, where the wall has been painted over. Now, yeah, the reason I hesitate on this is second-hand information has come to me that this particular example, when it loads, so slow. Not really sure why the internet's so slow at the minute. It will load at some point. Maybe it's just a very large image. The Cofiwch Dryweryn map does have a lot of data in it now, so it is kind of grinding to a halt these days when you're trying to upload it. We might just give up. But anyway, I mean, you can see what it is in the small image up there. That will be sufficient for us for now. I am told, second-hand, that the proprietor of the pub in which that mural is found, or was found, painted over it because it was a point of contention. Now, I have no more information other than that. But it's interesting when you put that in context, because the context is there were 3 examples and now they are all removed. Another example, near one of the schools in Pwllheli, again, a 2019 example, which as of May 2022 has also been removed. Now, the question here, of course, is why. And you always wonder, why have murals gone? Sometimes with murals being removed, it's because it's happened accidentally. So it's natural erosion, the paintwork has failed and it's just washed off. That's happened and it's easy enough to understand. Other examples we've seen as being directly defaced, and of course there have been examples where symbols associated with fascism have been painted over the murals, defacing them, obscuring them, and some examples were just local authorities washing them off. What's happening in Pwllheli? Now, this is an area where, last local elections, Plaid Cymru got their candidate in. This is an area of Wales where, you might expect there to be strong nationalist leanings, strong local affiliations with Plaid Cymru. There is that narrative within this area. But 3 symbols very closely associated with the independence movement and in association, Plaid Cymru in the broadest sense. Not that there's a formal relationship between the two, far from it, but there's often an implied relationship, which is as worth acknowledging as anything else. But why? Why have all the murals in Pwllheli disappeared? I think another fascinating question. Just as we might talk about the motivations for adding Hey on Why, what are the motivations for all of the murals in Pwllheli disappearing? That's a really, I think, fascinating question, because geographically, the Pwllheli examples sort of stood in a landscape where there are lots and lots of examples. Now, some of these have disappeared. Now, here we have an example right on the coast, also regarded as being removed. But this is sort of, this is, you could put this down to local authorities, perhaps. It's something being posted next to an information sign, so not hugely surprising to see that disappear. The Abermawr crossing was seen as being deliberately washed off, as in somebody recorded that somebody had gone to the efforts of washing it off. Now, okay, geographically, there's still quite a gap between these examples, but is there a narrative here? Is there something else going on culturally, politically, that is seen as regarding Cofiwch Dryweryn as being hostile, something to be removed, something that is threatening? I don't know, but it is very much a clear change that has taken place, and that cluster of removals here is definitely worth further thought. And again, I welcome insights and inputs if anyone knows if there is a particular specific local reason, local authority, local individuals who are hostile towards it. Whatever it is, it would be very interesting to know. The last thing that I want to draw reference to, and this is kind of special, because this is sort of recording an entry that has gone, but also an entry that has been added. So let's go to the original Taliesin example, which is quite famous. This is one of many images. I don't know if it's going to load because the computer's having all sorts of issues tonight. Shall we not? Oh, there we go. It has loaded. Good. Classic image. We've seen this circulated by lots of people on social media. Classic early Cofiwch Dryweryn. That was towards the end of the summer of 2019 that was recorded. Very famous. Lots of images online. It is technically, and I'll stress this, technically it is gone. It has been painted over. But if you zoom in on the map, you will notice that if it loads very slowly, we go a little bit closer, and we zoom right in. And on the same spot, I have included a new marker, a unique yellow Cofiwch Dryweryn map entry. And it's yellow because we have what might be broadly described as a Ukrainian Cofiwch Dryweryn entry. Now, obviously, this is not in the Ukraine. It's in Taliesin. It's on the same building, in the same location. Hopefully, this one will show up, because this is well worth seeing if you have not seen it already. But obviously, the change that's taken place here, what if I move the mouse? That'll load it. Obviously, the change that's taken place here is commemorating the conflict that's taking place in Ukraine at the moment. There we go. It's up, finally. Cofiwch Mariupol has now replaced Cofiwch Dryweryn. Now, I've been speaking with the owner of the property on social media, and he was saying that the original Cofiwch Dryweryn mural had faded quite badly, that it needed repainting, and that because of the time scale at the point of repainting, they decided to acknowledge what was happening in the conflict in Ukraine. The commitment that they've made on social media, at least, is that this mural is going to stay in place until, and I think the quote is, all Ukrainian territory has been returned to the hands of the Ukrainians. Now, I don't know if that extends to Crimea as well, in which case this mural could well be a fixed point in the landscape for a very long period of time indeed. But nonetheless, we now have a yellow entry for the map of Cofiwch Mariupol. And I think this is interesting because we've seen lots of what I describe as Cofiwch Dryweryn variants. Cofiwch Epint has come up lots of times. I'm also seeing some stickers on lampposts with Cofiwch Epint written on it as well. And there are sort of 3 or 4 common Cofiwch Dryweryn variance that we see throughout the landscape. This is an extension of that. I think what it's highlighting or channeling is the spirit of Cofiwch Dryweryn and applying it to other contexts. Perhaps in some respects this is highlighting the power of this specific protest movement in terms of voicing other displaced communities, other forcibly displaced communities. Obviously the context and the circumstances are very different, but nonetheless the spirit might be seen as comparable. I think at the very least that's what's implied here. There's a comparable spirit. So we have both the loss of Taliesin and the addition of Taliesin. Now the owner has stressed that when the territories in the Ukraine are returned to Ukrainian authority, then this yellow mural will disappear and we'll see a return to the red mural entry as the Cofiwch Dryweryn mural will be repainted. That's the commitment that's been made during conversations on social media. But as things stand, if we have a look at the map, if we zoom back out, and if the internet catches up with me, we currently have a yellow entry on the map, not that far away from our green entry of the Llanrystud site, the site of the original mural, which I have argued is a brand new example, and largely because, you know, it is a new painting, it's a new wall, the whole thing is new. There's a whole video that I posted about my thoughts on the site of the original. But in the meantime, we have a yellow entry, which is, you know, really interesting, a fascinating extension of the mural movement itself. But more broadly speaking, that is it. That is the extent of where we are with Cofiwch Dryweryn. So not that many changes, not that many removals, additions. I suspect that far greater numbers of the murals that are recorded in this map have probably been removed. One of the great challenges that I always stress that I have with this project is being able to monitor all of these. You know, if we zoom in, the example in Eglwys Uru, here it says good last monitored the 6th of 2020. Now I should update this because I drive past this mural pretty much every day. I can do a condition report for today, the 3rd of August 2022, and I would say it's still good. I know that that one is still there, so I should update the map on that. But for all the rest, this is quite challenging. Remember what I said, 156 entries in total. Let's stick the main part of the map there. Let's zoom it out. Let's have the whole world map. You know, we have those examples, you know, heading out this way in the Falklands, in North America. You know, what's happened to those examples? Is that example in the Falklands still there? Is this example in Brighton, the one that was carved into some sea defences, is that still there? Is the Birmingham example still there? It's that sort of thing that, you know, if you're being honest about it, you'd probably say it's unlikely that those examples are still there. But if we were able to check and monitor, how fascinating would it be if they are still there? How fascinating if they're still there and they've been refreshed, if someone locally is not just making sure that the monument is safe, but they are refreshing it, rebuilding it, repainting it, recommitting that local geographical relationship with this protest movement on a more regular basis. That would again be a fascinating part of the story. But ultimately, we don't know. It's something that we will hopefully get insights on as we go. You know, I have a couple of what I describe as informal spotters out there who update the map for me in terms of getting our locations more accurate, and their work is profoundly appreciated because, you know, I can geographically do Pembrokeshire. I can't really monitor the rest very easily. So, as ever, I love maintaining this. It remains a fascinating project for me to continue, but I can only continue it with your assistance, going forward. So if you are out there and you see new examples that are not on the map, or if you check for where these examples are close to you geographically, and you see they are gone, or they've been changed or replaced, or indeed defaced, I want to know. It's the only way this map can be sustained. So on that, I'll bring this particular video to a close. Like I say, always a pleasure doing these. When I do the next one is sort of dependent on whether there are any changes. So again, if you see changes, let me know and we'll do another video. Until then, you know, this could be the last one I do if there are no changes. So we'll see what happens. But for now, I hope this continues to be of use and of interest to you if you are enthusiastic about the Cofiwch Dryweryn mural, story, wider history. And hopefully this continues to feed into the recording and the documentation of the continuation of that form of protest and expression. So yeah, I'll call it a day there. Check out those new examples. Check out Hey on Why if you haven't done so already. Check out Taliesin with our new yellow example. And yeah, tell me if you know what's going on in Pwllheli. Interesting questions there. For now, guys, pleasure as always. We'll see you soon, and look forward to chatting about this with you on social media or on the Cofiwch Dryweryn Facebook forum. Until then, Cofiwch, noswaith dda.